more. Like, we're low-key going up right now. I'm your host, Joshua Potts, Mr. Pottsable, always with the brother with the same mother, Aaron Potts, Super Hot Potts, and one of your favorite two black runners coming at you every single Two Black Tuesday.
Dang, that was a good one. My vocals were on point today.
I see you. We hyped today. We just came off a big podcast last week. We we were like in the twilight zone for a little bit, but we kind of back. We trying to get back on the rhythm, and I just want to thank everybody for just sticking with us, bruh. It's been a journey for like the past 2-3 weeks, and it's been a weird time. But we're trying to get back onto this regularly scheduled program, and just glad that you guys are here sticking with us. A few announcements before we get into this. We have a new Instagram page, a Two Black Runners Instagram. We're gonna go ahead and follow that. Just Two Black Runners. It's tight. It's gonna be lit. I think it's just gonna be really personal with me and Aaron on there, and I think it's gonna be a really fun time. So go ahead and follow that. I don't know about the new running report page yet though, but like it's gonna come. If there's something down in the show notes, go ahead and click on that. So just go ahead and check out down below. Then also subscribe to our email list as well, because just in case anything goes down, you can keep up to date on our email list on our website. Go ahead, subscribe to that. Then subscribe to us on YouTube, because Aaron, bro, we're gonna be at the Sound Running invite this weekend, and we're gonna do some other cool stuff on YouTube. Like, a lot is going down on YouTube, and they need to subscribe there. Like, for real.
Yeah, and like I was just thinking when you were making all these announcements right now, I was like, dang, like okay, like we got a lot going on. Like we really doing something out here.
We really do. And like with all of this, like we're still fitting in these guests. We're almost to 52. But with that being said, bruh, let's just get into it. Like, honestly, let's get into it. We have a great guest today. She's the reason you clicked on this podcast today. She's the founder of Harlem Run. She's the co-chair of Running Industry Diversity Collective, the director of sports advocacy at Wazelle. She does so many things for the running community, for the black community. She kind of just spews out black girl magic, black girl mom magic, black girls run, everything that you could think of. Alison Désir is on the Two Black Runners podcast. This is hype. Alison, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing even better with that intro. I'm excited to be here. Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you on today, Alison. Like Joshua said, you were someone that we kind of discovered this year with just all the crazy things in the world that was just going on. But can you briefly just describe, we may have some new viewers that haven't heard of you. Can you describe like what you do for a living?
Yeah. So I don't get paid for this first thing that I'm going to say, but I am a mom. And you're going to hear my son in the background. That is the most difficult, time-consuming, rewarding job I have right now. I'm also the director of sports advocacy at Wazelle, as you mentioned. Wazelle is a women's clothing brand by women, for women, and I just joined that position about a month ago. I'm the founder of different run communities, Harlem Run, Run for All Women, really interested in creating inclusive communities for Black and Brown folks. And I'm also the co-chair of the Running Industry Diversity Coalition, which is a new coalition that was established to look at how can we make the running industry more inclusive and equitable, right? Like, I know we're going to get into it on this podcast, but the ways that running as a Black person is different in terms of safety and comfort and how you're seen. So what can the industry do to make sure that's not a problem?
Yeah, no, and that is a whole lot on it. And first and foremost, just being a mom on top of like the three different things you just named is insane. And I just feel like you're an inspiration to so many people in the running world. And me and Joshua being like, we come more so from like, the track and field, like growing up during the sport. So when I discovered you like this past year, I was like, I didn't even know like this like side of running really existed. So I'm excited to like really like dive in and just learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I remember seeing you at the Olympic trials. That's when we first met. last year, back when people could hang out.
Yes. We're just about a year. We're just about a
Yeah,
year past that. So that's crazy to think about.
yeah, yeah.
And then one more thing, like just piggybacking off from last year, definitely like I just realized how much people, because usually because I'm also I view Let's Run a lot sometimes. I be on there at times, and like people, the term like hobby jogger like comes up a lot, and I'm all like. After like seeing you and other people over this past year, I'm like, man, it seems kind of cool to be a hobby jogger. You know, like you can do a lot of things, and a lot of things can come from it. And I think we've seen that this year, just the power of what like a hobby jogger has on the running culture, especially from the things that you did last year. But like, what was just because last year was crazy, 2020, and coming into this year, it still has been kind of rocky, but we're kind of getting through it. But from last year, like, what's one thing that you took away from 2020, good or bad, that has propelled you into this year?
Hmm. 2020 for me was really, I've been, it's funny the term hobby jogger, but I've been running. I started in growing up, I was a 400-meter runner and did some track and field, but I started running long distance about 10 years ago now. And I've always used my voice and sort of brought together the activism piece and the community piece. But 2020 was really a year where I saw the power of my voice and the importance of not being quiet, right? Like I saw that when there's an opportunity to take a risk and to say something that might not go over well, but it really matters and it's really important to you, you got to do it. So I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned from 2020. And yeah, I hope that's it's scary to go out on a
Mm-hmm.
limb, but I hope that that's something that I continue to do.
Yeah, and since you're talking about going out on a limb, taking risks, like one of the first things that I really saw you do, and I know you've been doing work before this, was when you called out Runner's World for the lack of diversity in their covers, and
Yeah.
that was crazy to me. You did that whole letter, you posted on Instagram,
Yes.
and that was like the first time like I really felt like you. I really feel like you were like the catalyst for this huge
Mm,
change that we've seen in the running community. Like,
thank you.
what went into your mind and to make that decision, like to do all this research and to call out a big platform like Runner's World?
Yeah, I think one thing that is a huge piece of this is me becoming a mother and having Corey made me realize one how short life is, right? Like once you have a child, you realize like, oh snap, one day I'm not gonna be here, right? Like life gets
Mm-hmm.
gets shorter, and I realized that I really want to do everything that I can to make this world better for my son. And if I see something that doesn't vibe with me, if I see something that could be potentially hurtful to my son, like I have to say something, right? So just looking at I feel like when I wrote that, so initially I wrote an email to Jeff Dengate at Runner's World, and then I was like, you know what, he might get this email and he might not pay any attention to it,
Yeah.
but if I share this on social media, I know that it'll get the conversation going. So I posted it, and I hoped that it would get the conversation going, but I sort of posted it and walked away from my phone. I came
Yeah.
back an hour later, and I was like, "Whoa!" Right? Like this thing is really going viral. And to your point, I think it was like I'm not the first person to see this. I'm not the first person to ever think, wow, the running industry really doesn't uplift Black voices or showcase Black folks on covers, or, we're not in positions of power in the running industry. But it was really the timing of calling attention to it. And yeah, I really do think it was a big catalyst in shifting media from this past year.
Was that before the Ahmed Aubrey murder, or was that after? I feel like it was before.
I think that was before. It's so 2020 for everybody is like such a blur. I think that was before, because the Ahmad when I spoke out about Ahmad Arbery, that was March or April. Again, my times are completely
It's all
completely off. It's all a blur. But yeah, like I said before, right? 2020 was really about finding my or not finding my voice, but knowing the power of my voice and taking those risks. So both of those were huge risks in terms of like, once you say something like that, the trolls start coming and, people start trying to dig into you and all of that. But it was just both of those things and so many other things that I work on are worth the risk.
Like in the middle of those two times of the runner's world, calling them out, and with Ahmaud Arbery, I feel like we saw a shift in the world, but I feel like we saw like a complete shift in the running world as well, where people have tried to become more aware in every type of way, where it is to race, sexuality, or anything like that, where people are trying to come more together. What have you noticed so much from 2020, what, like March, April, since then to now, that has shifted so much in our little space in running?
Yeah, I think that overwhelmingly it's been a positive reaction, right? Like overwhelmingly, folks in the running industry are realizing, like, oh wow, whiteness really is centered in the running industry, right? Like, I know you're a cross country athlete, right? Like when you go to cross country events, it's like largely white people, white
Yeah.
kids running. The coaches are all white, right? Like then you look at brands, the CEOs are all white, and I think if you're white and you may, like, white people grow up with a privilege where they don't recognize that they're centered, right? Like that's part of white privilege. So I think this past year really opened up a lot of people's eyes to it, and the reaction has been positive. People have been really investing in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. But the truth is, this is, as we say in the Running Industry Diversity Coalition, this is an ultra marathon with no medals, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is something the work that we're doing now is on the shoulders of folks of our ancestors who were protesting in the civil rights movement, and right, like, so this is not something that's going to be fixed quickly or easily, because it's systemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, like, lots of positive action, lots of folks making investments, both financially and emotionally and, labor wise, into trying to figure out how do we make running a place where anybody can just show up.
Yeah, and definitely, like, we were just talking about on the podcast just like a couple weeks ago, how in running it is kind of centered. Like one of the biggest running figures I know from distance running that a whole brand was built off of was Steve Prefontaine, and I feel like that's still like this. He was a great dude, but his dude didn't even win medals. I mean, you have someone like Jesse Owens, like that's like the craziest American story, standing up to Hitler, winning 4 medals.
Exactly.
Like it's
Or like you
crazy,
think
but
about Ted Corbett, right? Like in terms of long distance running, and I know you all are in like the track
Mm-hmm.
and field world, but Ted Corbett was like he went to the Olympics for the marathon in 1952. Like he was running these 100-hour races. He established New York Road Runners. He was on the RRCA. Like you're talking about a legend, right? And why are there? I mean, there's one race named after him in New York. No medals associated with it. But why? Yeah, like why isn't he somebody who's enshrined, right? It's only recently, and it's because Black and brown folks are not centered in these spaces. But that's it. Yeah, that's I always think about that too. I'm like Prefontaine, like I mean, incredible athlete, but he was also only around for such a short time, right?
yes. And it's just like I just imagine what would the running industry as a whole look like if it was built around someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like it would be completely different. That
Mm-hmm.
would change the people who are getting sponsored. Those would change the people that are working internally. So
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy how these little things can affect a whole industry. But another
Totally.
question I wanted to ask you, I feel like I don't know. I just feel like it took Ahmed Aubrey's death to really like get the running world moving. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the running world is somewhat behind
Mm-hmm.
other sports when it comes to this, which is kind of strange to say because when you think about track and field, I mean, you think about Tommy Smith and
Mm-hmm.
them and all these protests, but we really don't talk about the social movements that have been in running in the past. Like
Mm-hmm.
it isn't new
Right.
to that runners are speaking out,
Right.
but it's new for the brands to jump alongside of it for some
Right.
reason.
Right. Yeah, that's what's so bizarre. Like when I talk about whiteness being centered in the running industry, it's not because Black and brown people haven't been here. It's because we haven't been given a voice or the same shine. I was actually reading a story about Wyoming Attias right now, she protested alongside Tommy
Yeah.
Smith. And it was an article from a year or two after she went to the Olympics talking about how she was unemployed, couldn't find a job. She had thought that her life was going to change, but she was essentially written out of history, right? Like she's still not even acknowledged for the double golds that she won. But yeah, I think with Ahmaud Arbery, I think there's something about white folks and white supremacy, like people don't believe us, right? Like there are all these things like believe black women, like trust black women, trust black men. And it's because people don't believe us until it gets to a point where Ahmaud Arbery is shot dead, or it gets to a point where the January 6th insurrection, right? Like we know these things. Like it's not unsurprising. It's tragic and shocking and despicable that Ahmaud Arbery was shot. But am I surprised? No. Right? Was I surprised on January 6th? No. But many white folks were completely surprised. And so I think, unfortunately, it took something where a lot of like white men, fathers who I talk to are like, oh, well, I saw my son in Ahmaud. And so it had to be that like personal connection for people to wake up, not just like a sad truth.
No, but Allison, I really wanted to talk about like the athletes' help that we've been getting, because like Aaron's been saying, like we're definitely more into the sports side, into the track and field side. So what has been like having those allies, like someone like I remember, I'm pretty sure you were on Keeping Track earlier last year with Molly Huddle and Alicia Montano and Roisin Willis. And also I remember got the chance to talk to Michael Johnson, who's bringing up someone like Kara Goucher, who's been outspoken on Twitter and her getting backlash and stuff like that. So having those allies, and even somebody like a Gwen Berry and Noah Lyles standing up for social justice in the sport of running, how much do you think that is a help into the movement?
Yeah, it's so powerful. Like the truth is, it takes all voices, right? Like, and I think it's incredibly important that you have a black and brown folks saying this, and we need white folks saying this also, right? Like it's going to take all of our voices. And in my position specifically, like when I was on the Keeping Track podcast, I was like losing my mind. I was like, I am talking with Alicia Montano, right? Like this person is my hero. But then when you come down to it, when you're having a conversation, it's like we're both black mothers. We're both in this sport trying to make a living in different ways, obviously.
Yeah.
We both really believe in the power of running. And we both realize how our opportunities are limited because we are black women, right? So it was really cool to join forces. And that's sort of like, you have like the top down, the elites, and you have the bottom up with me being like an average runner, community builder. And that's what it's going to take, because in order to pressure brands and stores and, races, and like, it's going to take all of us saying, no, we demand more, right? Like, we're not going to tolerate this.
Yeah, because thinking about earlier when we were talking about the Runner's World covers, when that came out and you guys were talking about that, and there's the movement, even people like posting their own covers of like a Runner's World, I was thinking about me and our own mom, because our mom, she runs and she's been running more and more and more, and now she does half marathon. She low-key, she be running a lot. She's running a lot, like low-key. But like, I be thinking about her, just the fact of like when she walks through a store and she doesn't see people on a Runner's World magazine or any just aerobic or muscle magazine of people that look like her, but she obviously has like the example most of the times of like us at track meets, but she didn't pay attention to track all that much. She didn't even play sports when she was in high school or anything like that. And so like being able to connect to something like that is something that's definitely missing. And like the opportunities, if she had that when she was younger, I don't know, she low-key could have been a good cross-country runner. The amount that she running now at like 52, she could have been killing it. Like I don't know if the opportunities were there for her.
It's so true. When I started running long distance 9-10 years ago, I mean, I didn't know that regular black people ran marathons, right? Like I was like, I know Kenyans and Ethiopians and Eritreans run, but I had never seen like a regular black person until I saw my friend on Facebook, and that's why I decided to start running. So beyond just the representation, like and not just, because that's hugely important. It showed, like you said, it allows somebody to connect with that person. It also allows other people to normalize the experience, right? Like with Ahmaud Arbery, it was automatically assumed that he was like doing something bad or running from something. The more representations of Black and brown people running, the less assumptions of criminality there are.
For real
But
though.
then also, if you're talking about elite athletes, like their bonuses are based on what publications they're on, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
where they appear. So there are very real material financial consequences if Black elite athletes are never making it on covers. Then white elite athletes always have this additional financial win that they don't even have access to. So there's like, there's layers to it. It's not at all a small thing.
For real. Like it definitely adds up, because if you don't look like that person that the brand thinks is gonna sell or people are gonna connect
Exactly.
to, then you're gonna be less likely, or you're gonna have to do way more. You're gonna have to do way more to get on that
Exactly.
cover. You're gonna have to.
Exactly.
We just had Brittany Brown, a sprinter. She is sponsored by Adidas, but she didn't get sponsored until she got second at the World Championship.
Mm.
And it's just like, that don't make no sense to me.
And like in addition to that, I was thinking about like with Alafine and at the Olympic trials, and even the way like sportscasters and the way what they're saying as they're calling races, right? Like Alafine was like the underdog and wasn't getting the same kind of coverage as Molly Seidel, right? Or if you look at Sarah Hall, who I forget what race that was. What was it, the London Marathon? Who came from
Yeah.
behind? But like the people, like all of that is important, right? The amount who's saying your name, who's telling your story, like to your point, all of that adds up. And I think it's with women already getting only 4% of sports media coverage to begin with. Like we really have to think deeply about all the ways that marginalized people are not getting their fair share.
Yeah, it's honestly equity. It's equity at the
Yep.
end of the day, especially when you say only 4% of
It's
women
wild.
is like shown as coverage. If like most of that 4% is white women, then
Exactly.
it's gonna be it's a hard world out there. It's gonna be real tough.
So
Exactly.
is that like the practical mission of the running industry diversity coalition, to be able to bring like programs forward and just bring funding forward to like get coverage of more like Black women or women of color and just men of color as well to the forefront? Is that like the mission behind it?
So that's part of it. We're really trying to address the entire industry. So I'm sorry, I see that I keep freezing here. I don't know why, but I think the voice is still going. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's to address all parts of the industry. So it's to address media, right? So why to look at the lack of equity in media coverage? It's to look at the brands in terms of who are the ambassador picked for initiatives, and what do they look like, who's in the C-suite of those brands, right? Like I read this quote somewhere that if your company still looks like a plantation, you're not doing it right. Right? Like if all the
Mm.
power is concentrated at the top in white people's hands and the CEO and the board members, then you're doing it wrong. So how do we create opportunities for power sharing and ownership in brands? Same thing in the retail space. How do we speak with race directors about making sure that there's access for folks to races? Sometimes races are, well, not sometimes, many times races are very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then how do you make sure that races are safe? For example, if there's a trail race in the middle of the Midwest somewhere, how are you ensuring that a Black and brown person feels safe? So, it's all aspects of the industry. And we have over 1,000 partners. That's what we call people who join. A
Mm.
thousand partners from all of those different parts of the industry.
Yeah, and it's just crazy that this all like kind of formed in 2020. Like all these
Yeah.
people kind of were awakened, or they just felt empowered by everything that was going on, and came together like with that one commonality with running. Like, how
Yep.
has running been like a powerful thing for you in your life? Because you're doing so
Yeah.
many amazing things with it.
Thank you. Yeah, so like I mentioned, I started off as a 400-meter runner, and I had dreams of being in the Olympics, which is so funny now that I like know Olympians. I'm like,
Yeah.
I did not have the heart to do it, like at all. I just had like a pipe dream. But when I started running 10 years ago, like it transformed my whole life. It helped me with my depression and my anxiety. It connected me with community. It made me realize that like running makes you feel really small in some ways, but also like larger than life, right? Like when you accomplish something really
Yeah.
difficult in running, whether it's running a mile, a 5K, a marathon, you realize like, wow, I'm like really powerful. I can will myself to do really difficult things. So the joy that I get from running and then sharing it with other people, um, that's that's really been my life. Like that's how I met my partner. And I think in tackling something so difficult as systemic racism or like, all these inequities, we all want everybody to feel that same joy in running. We
Hmm.
all want a world where there are healthy communities, there's access to parks and roads and all of that. So I think that's really what unites us. And of course, we're drawing from activists in the past who've always used running and movement for activism.
Then, as you said, like that word community and building that like running community, it's like we already said before, like I kind of learned more and more about the running community in 2020. But like I feel like I don't really, I'm starting to understand and starting to comprehend more what that running community is about. But being somebody that's been on a team, like a cross country team, or just mainly individual for most of my life so far, I don't really. It like that's just my team. It's my team. But
Mm,
what's the importance of having a community once you get out of that team setting, once you're living by
yeah.
yourself or outside of college? What becomes so important of having that community, if that be from running, if that be, I don't know, a chess club or a book club? What's the importance of
I
that
mean,
community?
yeah, it's everything, right? Like I feel like I'm like, listen, young man, when you get older, you're gonna see you get into this world and it could be a scary, lonely place. But really, like,
It really can.
you don't have the same opportunities to be in like a team environment as you get
Hmm.
older. It also gets really difficult to meet people and not feel like awkward about it. And there's I feel like the United States in general does not do a good job of keeping people active. So through running communities, I mean, it's like just being plugged into this global network of people
Uh,
who are aiming for the same things as you. So like recently I moved from Harlem, New York to Seattle, Washington. I'm actually hosting a virtual run summit in a couple of weeks to get to know people. But like before I
oh,
even got here, people in Seattle were like, yo, like we're not running right now, but here's where you should, we're not running right now because of COVID, but here's some great places to check out. As soon as we meet up again, like I want to catch up with you, like let's share stories. So it's like it's a global like family. And
hmm,
of course there's differences, and it's not, every family fights, right? So it's not this like perfect utopia, but it really is in urban communities, it's like this, it's just such a nice um entry point into somewhere that you might not even like. You could go visit somewhere, I could go visit somewhere and look up that run club or run crew and run with them. So it's a really powerful means of connection uh, in a time in my life when you know you don't really have these kinds of opportunities. You're not going to be on a school team, you're not going to be you don't necessarily run into the same people every day like you do when you're
yeah.
in school, and that's what the running community provides for you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also touch on like, so you said you started running because you saw like one of your friends that you could relate to going
Yeah.
out there and doing that and helped you like just conquer a lot that you were going through at that time. Was there a moment when was like the first moment for you that you wanted to use running to do something more, or like you felt like you needed to speak up about the
Mm,
running community?
mm. That's a really good question. So I started Harlem Run in November of 2013, and nobody showed up for like months. It was just me by myself showing up, inviting people to come out. And during that time, I was reaching out to other run clubs and crews, and what I noticed is that in New York, most of the leaders were men, and I was reaching out to them to try to connect and collaborate, and like I was getting radio silence. Like nobody was responding to me. And that's when and then a few months later, people started showing up, and I would reach out again to these other male leaders and nobody was responding to me. And that's when I realized, like, wow, I'm in a unique position as a Black woman leader in this space. And I also realized that I wasn't going to let being ignored stop me from doing what I wanted to do. Right. But it was a clear moment for me when I realized, like, the kind of space that I want to provide, like, I want to make sure people, like, if somebody reaches out to me, like, I want to be responsive, right? Like, if somebody wants to collaborate, I'm down. But I was entering, like, at that time, it was so male dominated and so uncollaborative that I realized, like, okay, what I want to do is different. Like, I want to make sure that everybody gets this the same kind of experience. And things have changed in New York, but very much in like 2013, 2014, there was like this very competitive kind of spirit around clubs and crews that I knew I didn't want to be part of.
Yeah, it's crazy too. Like when you're just trying to, you basically found this thing and you wanted to just tell everybody about it. You
Exactly.
know?
I was like, you guys, this shit is so good.
Yeah. And it's just like, we're not really messing with you. And you're like, wait, what? It's like, go ahead, Joshua.
I was just gonna say how, like, I always like to say, like, our running report, it kind of just correlates on what you were saying too, because we were trying to do the same thing. Like when we came into the running report, we saw the media spaces and running not really fitting our characteristics and not seeing ourselves in the media space, and we really wanted to bring that there. And for you to go out there and do the Harlem Run and not people show up, like eventually people did show up, because like the proof is in the pudding. And same for the two Black runners, the proof is in the pudding as well. You just need to taste it, and we were able to taste that pudding. Like, I don't know, it tastes good, and people want to approach that, and you start doing bigger and better things. And that's what you started doing. You started creating more pudding over time. Now with the running industry diversity collective, then now with Oiselle, and so on and so on. You've done so many things, and like that didn't all just start from when it was that one day with Harlem Run and you didn't want to be ignored anymore. Like, when did that start for you as like a young kid to be like, I'm going to stand up for myself and I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. I'm going to defend myself. Was there like a certain moment or something where it kind of just shifted for you as a kid?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've been reflecting on it a lot more now. But I realized that there was always that piece of me that, like you said, like wanted to stand up for myself, use my voice. There's something that I think about that happened in 5th grade. And it was this, I've mentioned this story a few times, but it was this project that we had to do. The town that I lived in was celebrating its 100th anniversary. So we were given this assignment to like go to the library, and it was like our first time going to the library to do research and talk about something related to the town's history. So everybody, all the kids, like, were doing like little projects, little silly projects. And as I was looking through pictures from the 1950s of my town, I realized that everybody in the photos was white, right? Like there were photos of white kids at school, white kids at the library, white kids playing sport. And I thought to myself, where are all the Black people? So my project, what I did is I made a poster project of pictures from Teaneck, the town that I grew up in, like the history of Teaneck, with all these pictures of white people. And then I went around in 1995 and took pictures of all my classmates and at the library in the same places. And it had all these diverse spaces. And I said, what's wrong with these pictures? Right. So from a very young age, I was always really seeing things from a racial and critical lens. I was always saying the thing that was like kind of uncomfortable. I remember my teacher being like, well, this isn't really the direction I thought this was going to go. I was like running for class president. I remember we had to do an exercise in high school about like writing an MLK speech. And my whole speech, I went to this private school, mostly white folks. And my whole speech was about how my experience at that high school was feeling like I, as one of the few Black people, had to speak as a representative of every single Black person in the world. And how that was not in line with what Martin Luther King, what he spoke about, right? So yeah, I was always like kind of like that troublemaker, but the person to use my voice and And so good call on that, Joshua. Like that's exactly the same energy that I brought to Harlem Run and all of these initiatives. Like, oh wait, I can do something about that. Oh wait, I can use my voice here. And the
Yeah.
more you do it, it doesn't get easier, but you get more comfortable doing it and you can take on bigger challenges.
Was that well received? Like when you first off as a kid, was it well received? And has there been times to where like it kind of hurt you, like the response that you got back and you felt like, dang, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Did you ever go through struggles like that?
Yeah, definitely. And my parents. So I'm first generation American. My father was from Haiti. My mother from Colombia. And so at home, I was always told these stories. My father was always telling stories about the Haitian Revolution and about how brave these enslaved folks were, that they rebelled and established the first Black Republic. And then not only that, they took the flag of they created the Haitian flag by taking the flag of France and literally ripping the white out of it and flipping it on its side, and in a show of like white people being out of the country, right? So I was always told these stories about like how powerful my ancestors were, and then my mom is an anthropologist and a sociologist, so I was always hearing stories about the civil rights movement, all these things. So in my home, and that's something that is really important to me now as I think about raising my son, in my home, I was always supported and I was always told that I was special and like that what I did mattered,
Yeah.
So yeah, there was definitely pushback. People were like, you're kind of weird. And why are you always causing a problem? But my parents were like, this is what you were born to do,
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking too, like that really is the reality for most Black folk. Like
Yep.
you're gonna be somewhere where you are the minority, or where people are gonna just assume that you're gonna conform,
Yep.
even when it doesn't like fit to what you want. So it's really like, you're going through the pictures, you're only seeing white folk. It's just kind of confusing to you, especially
Exactly.
as a kid. So like, I've definitely felt like that before. So it's just like, hey, I'm not trying to bring the mood down, but this is just the reality. It's really just the reality, you know what I mean?
Exactly. I'm not trying to start a fight, but it's like
No.
this is off. Like, why doesn't anybody else realize it?
And then I was also
go ahead,
I
Joshua.
was gonna say I was also curious, like who are some leaders that you kind of looked up to when you were younger, or even look up to now, that really motivate you as well? Because you saying, I think you're definitely, how you were describing, you're a natural born leader, but even leaders need leaders, leaders need mentors and teachers. But who were like some of the leaders that you looked up to? That also, who are some teachers in your life that really helped you through things?
Damn, Joshua, with the good questions. So I think one person who's been really special in my life was, so in up until 5th grade, I went to public school, and then in 6th grade, I went to private school, and I like fought tooth and nail. I was like, I don't want to be around all these rich kids. Like, we were middle class. I was not rich. I don't want to be around all these rich kids. It's going to be all white kids. Like, I don't want to go. But my parents, forced me. And in 6th grade, my math teacher, Mr. Anderson, shout out to Mr. Anderson if you're listening. He is a Black man from Jamaica, and I was terrible in math, but he took an interest in me and helping me in math. And also, he was the first person to realize that I could run and that I could sing. And so because I saw him, again, going back to representation, I saw him in this mostly white school, and he actually like cared and listened to me. He was somebody who I really looked up to, and who I realized the power of being that friend or that mentor in a space where you feel alone. And a lot of the work that I try to do now is like I try to reach out to other Black and brown women around things like pay and opportunities, right? Like, there are a lot of things that go unsaid in this industry about, like, especially with like the influencer industry, about like, are you getting paid for this? Like, how do I ask for what I want? How do I make sure I'm not being taken advantage of? So I think about Mr. Anderson and the way that he didn't single me out, but he gave me that attention and support that I needed. And then now, somebody who I really, really look up to is Latasha Brown, who's the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. she is like a force. She is responsible for, she along with Stacey Abrams and many Black women is responsible for helping to flip Georgia. Just like tireless work in the South in terms of voter registration and addressing all the voter suppression tactics. And she's also just a wonderful person who she says is guided by love, right? Like everything's going to turn out okay because of the power of love in this world. And I just want to, I look up to her in terms of her energy, in terms of how much she knows, but just how good you feel after talking to her. Like you talk to her and you're like, yo, I could do anything. And like that is such a power. So Mr. Anderson and Latasha Brown, two of many folks who've inspired me.
Yeah,
Shout out.
Everybody definitely needs somebody to, like, when you make it to these ranks or these spaces, like to put on the next person or tell somebody so they could tell somebody. It's just like, especially like I think back to like running. It's like, bro, like you could run distance, like it's fun, like it's great. We could have a whole run club, bro. It's good for your health. You might live longer, and you might be kind of faster than what you think. So there's a lot of opportunities there that get closed off. But also just going back a little bit to the future, with all these little, like, not, I don't want to say little, but all these startups that you have created in this activism running world, how do you manage all of that? And is there times where how do you know when it's like, hey, I need to take a step back for like my own emotional well-being?
Great question. So I will say that everything that I've done has been because of all the support that I've had, right? Like with Harlem Run, there's like a whole leadership team. Run for All Women, same thing. And I'm actually, it's like great timing because I've actually stepped away being the face and the leader of many of these projects. So with Harlem Run, my partner, my husband, is actually he manages it along with a leadership team of 8 other folks who are now, those are the people who are on the ground. Like they're making the decisions, they're creating the community, and that's really cool because I think there's something, for me, leadership is all about helping other people find their power to be leaders. And when you can step away from something and it's functioning and it's making even braver and bolder choices, like that's success. With Run for All Women, in just a few weeks, we're actually, me and 2 other leaders are going to announce a whole new leadership team that's going to take over Run for All Women. So I'm in a place now where I realize I can't do everything. And there are people who are qualified, have even bigger visions and dreams than me. But even with that, like as a mom working from home with a 2-year-old, almost 2-year-old in a pandemic, I mean, it's just so hard. Like I hit you guys up today. I was like, listen, I need 20 more minutes because my son's asleep. It's like, we all are doing the best we can. And I have to remind myself, like, working with a child without access to childcare, with the fear of getting sick, like this is not normal. You know, like we have to give ourselves grace. Like people are still, knock on wood, dying. People, I mentioned 2 people in Jackson, Mississippi have been without water for 2 weeks. Like what kind of world are we in? Right. So you have to remind yourself, breathe and take the time that you need.
Most definitely.
I totally understand that because I was just thinking, like, I find myself being in that position too, where like you sort of just want to keep on going and going and going, but then there is just some days like, man, I just need to step back and like chill out for a second, and that's definitely helpful. Like, what was like? This is kind of like an off question, but I think it's a cool question too. Just like, were you spending like a lot of time on your phone? Like, what were one place where like you felt like you were just dedicating like too much unnecessary time to that you have to step away from? Like me, it's mostly like my phone. Like I have to like put it into another room and like, okay, I'm just going to do like 3 hours today. And even for some people that's a lot, but like for me, that would be like, that's sometimes I'd be like scratching after a while. Like I need my phone. But like, is there anything like that where you got to put it away for a little bit?
Absolutely. Same thing for me. My phone, and specifically Instagram, right? And so in the month of December, I took a month off of social media, and it's because so social media for me is really I mean, it's such a powerful tool, but it's really like a positive space for the most part for me. Like it's part of how I create community during COVID-19, right? Like in the absence of being able to meet in person, like this is where a lot of us are connecting, and it's also a place to share and have really meaningful conversation. But I just found myself like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and then getting into a place of comparison and feeling badly. And this is something that I struggle with, like feeling like I'm not doing enough, which, excuse me, might sound like bizarre to you all because I'm doing so much, but it's this, it's just like one of those insecurities that I have. And I was like, this is all stemming from watching other people living their lives. Like I need a break. So that, and then, TV too, right? Like there's so many good series on, but what I realized, like time is so precious, and it's either I need to, like, I want to be doing the work that I care about, or I want to be spending time with my son, or I want to be not doing anything. I want to be resting. Like so I have to make a point many times to cut out like that in between stuff. Like, oh, I'll just watch TV to relax. Like, why don't I just relax? But it's difficult.
I feel that. I battle that too. Like, cause some days it's like, I feel like you just do so much, and so some days, and it's just like, oh, like I just want to chill. Like, I've been working all day. I just want to chill and watch Netflix. But then you end up watching Netflix for like 4 hours. It's like, bruh, like you could have just read at least for like an hour. You could just, or just even just chill for a little bit, or went and exercised.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, is watching Netflix really resting?
Exactly. So I want to put everybody on, and you too, if you don't follow them, but there's this Instagram called the Nap Ministry, and it's all about how rest is revolutionary. And the woman who started it, she calls herself a nap bishop, I believe, but she actually went back and studied and looked historically at Black people, but Black women more specifically, and how we are historically the least well-rested people. If you think about when we were enslaved, right? If you think about the amount of work that we had to do either in the field or in the house, and then caring for not just our own children, but caring for, masters' children. And then you think about living in a capitalist economy where you're told, like, work hard, play hard. When you're sleeping, somebody else is working, like, get on it, right? So like to nap and truly rest is a revolutionary act. And as Black and brown people, we need to resist working. We need to find times where we can rest and reimagine, particularly if we want to live in a different world. We need to have the time to even conceive of what that could be. When you're just like, go, 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 you can't reflect. You like, I find that I'm like not particularly creative when I'm just like on to the next thing. So anyway, I check out Nat Ministry. I didn't do service to really explaining what it's about, but it's a very powerful idea that taking back our time is an act of resistance.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope. And I think the power of like reflection, I think that's like powerful. Be able to, like, even in the midst of when you're going like go, 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 and you're accomplishing so many things, even when you're at the top, like a lot of people, I feel like a lot of successful like athletes, they said, yeah, I didn't really reflect a lot in that time. But I'm all like, dang, you didn't reflect like little bit, just a little, like you're the greatest in the world right now. Like, I don't know. I feel like I think it's just a great tool to be able to just like know where you are. And like I started like journaling has been a great help to me, to where like when things are just going array, to be able to like to go to a journal, or I try to read, not the best in keeping up with it, but journaling is definitely a one thing I try to do. But one place I want to go with the pod real quick is just like, you were a part of, is it the Route 100? You're a part of the Route 100 in 2017, and I was looking at that list, and I'm all like, wait, hold up, this is crazy. Like, there's like Sterling Craig Brown's on there, Ava DuVernay's on there, Beyonce. Like, there are some just is Black excellence on that list, and you were a part of that. Like, what was that like? That's so for someone to be like that, a part of like the running community is even bigger. Like, what was that like to be included in the Route 100?
I mean, it was one of those moments. Speaking of reflection, like I wanted to make sure. So I was on the list, and then they have like a celebration where they invite the awardees, and of course Beyonce didn't come, but there was like, I mean, Common was in the room. Like there was like a dope assortment of people who
mhm,
actually did attend, and that was a moment where I was like, okay, I don't want to just like, I want to actually like feel this. I want to be present and experience this. I don't want it just to be something that like I check off a list, or that I don't allow myself to remember. And like I try, like I didn't really have my phone out, because you know when you're on your phone and you're just like taking pictures, you're not even really feeling it.
yeah,
But it was such a, it's amazing to do the work, period, and then it's like the cherry on top to be recognized for it. And um that was a moment also when I realized like, wow, people are watching what I'm doing, you know. If
Yeah.
ever I thought that I didn't matter, or that my voice didn't count, like it does count. And it's sort of, for me, it like unlocked networking opportunities where there are folks who I met there who I still keep in touch with. I met like one of
mhm,
the founders of Girl Trek, who's just incredible, and that's been a cool connection. And yeah, you don't, I guess like it really is. It's cool to dream about like these things happening, but that's not really in the top of my mind, because you're not in control of that. But when it does happen, it's like okay, wow, this is real, you know.
Yeah, and to me, like the fact that you did all of this through like running as well, like as a part of it, like that's awesome to me. Cause like for me so far in my life, like running has taken me through college, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's like taking me into a career, like a job. And I wanna, and it's like, and we're doing like the running report, we're doing the podcast. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding all these different lanes through the sport, you know, and
Exactly.
I know it's just gonna help me if I even if I go out of it and do something else in business or whatever. But to hear that,
Exactly.
you know, you were recognized as a Route 100 and you were through running, like people
And
don't think that.
that's why like I'm fighting for other people to make sure we have access, right? Like because running, and any sport, but running really connects you like to, it's not just about like the deeper internal and like physical stuff that it does for you. It's about the opportunities that come from it, the people that you meet, the ways that you start to think about what's possible. Like, and everybody should be able to enjoy this, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't even wait to see where the two of y'all years from now will be like, I met them back in the day. I know the Potts brothers.
Hey, I can see it already. I can see it
Yeah,
already.
I
yeah.
hope, I hope so. I'm trying to be in the Route 100. I'm trying to be there too. That would be tight. That would be tight.
Now I know
But I
it's
think,
possible.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
for real, for real. Hey, that's true. That's a good point, Aaron. That's a good point. But I think we're kind of closing, almost like closing out. We have like a few like closeout questions. Just go through. The first one I wanted to ask was all like, because I heard this on another podcast, and I think it's a really interesting question for you. Like, if you were given like a blank check or somebody to like fully invest in you and be all like, you can do anything that you want with it, like what would you do with it? If that is something that you want to start like a charity, or like do a documentary, or create
Mm,
a movie, or write a book or a series of books,
mm,
like the sky's the limit. And what would that thing do to really produce in your life, I guess?
mm. Really good question. So I would do. I mean, there's so many things that come to mind, but two things that I'll mention. So one, like I really want to write a children's series, a children's book series. I have a book that I'm actually working on that comes out October 2022, but I want to write a children's book series about the power of running. And um, and I'm not going to share too much because somebody might steal my
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
But
True. Keep it
so
right. Keep it all right.
I want to write a children's book series. And then the other thing that's like not at all related to running, but something that I'm passionate about is I would, with the money, I would bail out everybody who's like in Rikers Island or any of these prisons for these like small, stupid infractions, right? Like
Yeah.
if I had money and power, then I would get rid of the
Mm-hmm.
bail system in general. But if I had the money to bail out folks, I think about Khalif Browder and like these young kids who end up in prison because they steal a backpack or because they they jump the subway fare. and then you end up in the system and it ends up ruining, if not ending, your life. So I would really think about something with prison reform, which I haven't done any particular activism yet in
Mm-hmm.
my life, but I just think about, like, it's just so, like, I can't even go there with my mind to think about what would happen to Corey if, God forbid, he gets caught up in the system for no fault of his own and then is just left to rot, So yeah, if I had all the money in the world and the power to come with it, I would I have to shout out Kim Kardashian, who's not somebody who I thought I'd ever be shouting out, but she is doing a lot of work around this. She's
Yeah.
shining, she's using her power to address some of these issues. So yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, what do you see as being the biggest challenge for the running industry moving into 2020?
Yeah, I think obviously, like, COVID-19, I think is a big challenge, and I think beyond just, like, hopefully as many folks as possible are able to get access to vaccines, but I think the running industry, in terms of just like restoring trust in people, like, I feel like it'll be so hard if there were an event that was gonna have like 5,000 people participating, which is like a low number. I don't know if I would feel comfortable. Like, there's just a fear of being around large groups of people now, right? Like, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I think a big concern is not just like the logistics or people getting vaccinating, but just giving people a sense of comfort around of being in large groups, a comfort. And I think it's going to be awkward, like, like hugging people again and like
Yeah.
shaking hands. It's like we almost have to learn how to be social again in that way. And I think there's going to be a lot of fear around that kind of intimacy, right? That kind of like closeness and connection. And running is really all about those types of connections and being close to people. And so I think restoring that faith in folks is it's gonna be really hard.
And then I have a question as well. If you could have like a dinner conversation with three people, dead or alive, or I'll even put in fictional characters as well, dead or alive, and just like really just talk about life, talk about anything in a dinner conversation, who would it be?
My goodness. Okay. Let's see. All right. Well, one of them is easy. I would want to. So my father passed away a few years ago, and towards the end of his life, he had dementia, and so I felt like I was at an age, like, he was already sick at an age where I actually was starting to get curious about my parents. Like, like when you're, and maybe not to like be like
Mm-hmm.
Josh, but like maybe like when I was 20, like I wasn't really asking my parents like questions about like what was it like living in the 70s and what was it like, like you when I was younger, I still saw my parents as like, oh, my parents. So I wish that I could have a conversation with my father now to like ask him what was it like being an immigrant, like leaving the country of your birth, not knowing English, coming over and like doing all the things that you did, and like the racism that you faced, and then what was it like? Like, he had three young daughters that he left in Haiti in order to come to this country. My half sister. So I would just would
Mm-hmm.
like I would like to have a grown up conversation with my father that I never had. Then I would love to have a conversation with actually Muhammad Ali. Like, I would love to, like, um he just was somebody who gave zero F's, and
Yeah.
was so true to himself. Um and then I would love to have a conversation with Michelle Obama um about not just her power, but also about like the the partnership that she has, like what it's like to be partnered with somebody who's also so powerful but still stand alone, right? And so and it's funny because like the one woman I mentioned, I want to ask about partnership, but I think it's because living in a patriarchy where women and black women are not really allowed to shine, she has found a partnership that allows her to shine in her own right. So yeah, I would ask her those types of questions. So those three folks.
I like that. That sounds like a great conversation. We might have to
Yeah.
get that on the
Yes.
pod.
Shout out to Michelle. Where are you?
Another question I wanted to ask: what are your top 3 favorite Black sitcoms? We were asking this Black History Month, but we're
Mm,
gonna ask it right now too. What are your
mm.
top 3 favorite Black sitcoms?
So this is so hard because Bill Cosby is so gross, but like
Yeah,
love the Cosby Show. Like I just loved it because it just was like um it was I learned so many lessons in watching that show, and it's so hard to now look back and think like, oh, this person was so sick and abused so many people. But Cosby Show. Um then I also really love let me think. All of a sudden I can't think of any other shows. I actually, this is like really strange. A show that I love to hate, Moesha. Like,
well,
because I think, so listen, I love to hate it, but what I thought was cool about it was that it showed like young Black girls,
Mhm.
and there was no show that showed like high school like awkwardness, right?
yeah,
So, and then speaking of awkward, I love Insecure. So I don't know, that's not
it's,
really like a sitcom, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's a great
Insecure,
show though. Season
yeah.
4 about to come out.
I can't
Dang, what's Lawrence gonna do?
wait. Boo to Lawrence. Like he just I was
Oh.
so happy for them to get back together, and then for him to have been so irresponsible, like bruh, come on now.
Yeah,
Aaron
that
just
that
put me
that
on to
episode was a
Insecure.
shocker. That
Yeah,
episode was a shocker.
definitely.
And a question that we ask everybody on the podcast is, who do you think we should have on our next podcast?
Hmm.
Any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, a few people come to mind. I would love to hear. I like can't get enough of Faith Briggs. Do you all know Faith Briggs? She is
No.
so she's a runner. She's an activist. She's a filmmaker. She made a documentary called This Land, which actually has like won a bunch of awards. But the documentary is around a run that she did in some of the oh my god in some of the like around indigenous lands, and she really ties together the importance of environmental justice and indigenous sovereignty, and she's just like an incredible person. She also yeah, I don't want to say too much, but Faith Briggs I would highly recommend. She's really cool. She lives in Oregon now, but I knew her when she lived in New York. And then one other person I would say is Verna Volcker. She is an indigenous woman, and she's somebody. So she, I guess she's. These are people who are hobby joggers, as you would say, Josh. But hobby joggers who are really making an impact.
Yeah.
Verna just has come onto the scene and really given voice to so many people who typically don't see themselves in this space. She's also on the leadership team of the Running Industry Diversity Coalition. So yeah, Faith Briggs, Verna Volcker. I know you guys have like lots of other cool folks probably already in mind, but those are people who I always want to hear more from.
Yeah, we always love getting suggestions just to like widen the scope of what the podcast could be.
Yeah.
But last but not least, what mark is a deep question, but what mark do you want to leave on running when it's all said and done?
Hmm. I want more people to feel like I made space for them in running, right? Like I want people to think like, oh, because Allison helped blaze a trail or pave the way for me to feel comfortable in this space.
That's awesome. I already think that you're doing that.
Thank
You're
you.
bringing a lot of people to the sport of running, and you're doing great things with it. So,
Thank you.
Joshua had to peace out for a second. His mic turned off, but Allison,
Hey.
we really both appreciate you
Thank
coming
you
on
so much.
with us today.
Thank you.
Any last words?
No, I want to thank both of you because I think I know that you all have it hasn't been easy for you all either. I've seen some of the moments that you've had blowback on social media. And the truth is, it's hard to be Black runners in this space. But what you're doing is so unique and so special and so important. So I'm just glad that I could be here. And yeah, we're all gonna blow up doing our thing.
Yes, yes. Well, Alison, you now are part of the Two Black Runners family. So if you ever have trouble with anybody and you need two Black runners to back you up, we right here, we with it. To everyone listening, if you listen this far into the podcast, we really do appreciate it, and you truly are a day one homie. But that's all we have for y'all today. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. Leave a rating on the pod. And Joshua, I don't know, Joshua, are you trying to tell me something?
Nah, I'm good. I'm good, bro. I'm good. Just wrap it up.
Okay. So we'll catch y'all next week on Two Black Tuesday.